All right. Welcome to the Pre-Sales Collective webinar today. All right. Looks like we have our attendees joining. I would love to know, where are you dialing in from today? While we wait for the attendance to continue through, let us know where you're dialing in from today. I'd also love to know if this is people's first Pre-Sales Collective webinar or if they've been to a webinar previously. All right, Philly, Pennsylvania, first one. Florida, Long Island, a couple Floridas. We got some first timers. Welcome. I love first time webinar guests. Welcome. We're so glad to have you. Good to see. We got global representation today.
Any Canadians on the chat, like me?
Let's see. We have any
Ireland? Wow. London.
Welcome to the Pre-Sales Collective webinar. If you're just joining us, let us know where you're dialing in from. Let us know where you're dialing in from. And if this is one of your first webinars, wow, Romania, Portugal, fantastic. Lots of Texas, New York. We're glad to have everybody.
Atlanta.
Atlanta. Love it. Colombia. We're going to get started in just a moment. Zoom takes a couple seconds to get the attendees on, so we'll get started here in a moment. Today's webinar, Pre-Sales Collective, Pre-Sales Secret Weapon video, which is a hot topic for everybody. I feel like this is just becoming more and more important to our day-to-day lives, especially in the past 15 months. So we'll get started here in a minute. Welcome to those who are joining. Please let us know where you are dialing in from and if this is your first webinar or not. But I'm going to go ahead and get started. So, hey, everybody, my name is James Kaikis. I'm the co-founder of Pre-Sales Collective and the host of today's webinar. We have an amazing panel, an amazing topic presentation for you today. I'm going to go through that here in a moment, but I want to just thank everyone for being here. You know, there's so much going on in our lives, right? Personal life, professional life. Some people are in Q3, Q4. You have many different places that you could be right now, but you're here joining us and we really appreciate it. And thanks for being involved and engaged with Pre-Sales Collective. Now, how do you make the most of this webinar today? We have two real rules, right? Be active in the chat. So message in the chat, message the audience, feel free to give your opinion, right? And if you have questions, ask them in the Q&A. If you ask them in the chat, they might get lost, but ask them in the Q&A. I'll be doing my best to weave them into our discussion, but we also have time at the end of the presentation to talk through audience Q&As. And so we're going to go ahead and get started here, and I'm going to launch our first poll. And I'm trying to understand which option best describes your role. This helps us understand our audience here today. And we're not going to share this information, but this is just good for our panel. Speaking of our panel, I'd love to introduce everyone. So welcome Megan, Joel, and Ellen to the panel today. Megan, why don't you introduce yourself?
So my name is Megan Corkell. Obviously, I am a brand ambassador at Lenovo. I previously did sales at Lenovo, and I took on this brand ambassador role right when the pandemic happened. So I have really been living in video world for the last 18 months and having to find different ways to connect with customers, as we have not been able to do face-to-face visits for the last 18 months. But yeah, that's pretty much the gist about me. I am based out of Raleigh, North Carolina, and very excited to be on today's panel.
Thanks, Megan. We're glad to have you. I know that you used to do a lot of travel and now you've been home, so you got a lot of perspectives today.
Yes.
Joel, would you like to introduce yourself? No stranger to the Pre-Sales Collective, Joel Duffield.
No stranger. No, you and I, it's funny, every time I hear James talk and then we get off a call, I'm like, okay, which podcast am I listening to next? I'm like, oh, wait, that wasn't a podcast I was on. So, hey, everyone, my name's Joel. I am the lead solutions consultant here at Vidyard. I have been here for just under a year. This is, as some of you may know, who have listened to the PSC podcast I was on with James. Actually, this is my first role as a SE. And so a little weird for me coming in during the pandemic. I've never traveled to see a customer, have only done Zoom demos, and coming out of 15 years in IT, and a background in that, and coming straight into this, and on a daily basis, just talking to people, sales teams, marketing teams around how they want to use video, the problems that they're having, the pain points they're having. And so excited to dig into some of that and really see what we can do to help everyone out with some of that stuff we've learned.
Yeah, appreciate the introduction, Joel. And congratulations on your recent promotion. I mean, you're another success story of making a transition into pre-sales and making an impact right away. So congrats on that. We're glad to have you today. Ellen, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Ellen Stafford. I'm the Director of PreSales and Solutions at Vidyard. I'm based in Kitchener, Ontario. So I saw a couple of Canadians posting in the chat there. So as Joel mentioned, we help our customers use video. So if you're not familiar with Vidyard, we're a video platform for businesses that helps salespeople and marketers communicate more effectively with the use of video. And I've been leading sales teams at Vidyard for about 5 years now. So we're always looking at ways to optimize the sales process. And for us, video has played a big role in that. So pretty excited for this topic.
Yeah, thanks, Ellen. We're definitely excited to hear your expertise on today's topic and this subject. So what we're going to do today is we're going to have a little bit of interactive session. I'm going to pass it to a couple of different presenters today. We're going to do a couple polls. We're going to do some Q&A. And so again, use the Zoom Q&A to ask questions. I'll weave them into the discussion. So, really to start, I want to kick it over to Ellen here momentarily, but how can you get your prospects' attention and hold it throughout long multi-thread sales cycles? I mean, this is a topic and a question that many of us face in our day-to-day, no matter how long you've been in pre-sales. So Ellen, I'm curious your thoughts. And as we get into today's topic, expand on those.
Well, yeah, the topic title gave it away, right? So the secret weapon for us in that is video. And we're not talking about live video. I'm sure everybody spends a lot of time on live videos today, Zoom calls and things like that. I'm talking about on-demand video content. So this could be custom videos that you're creating for stakeholders in a specific opportunity, or it could be existing video content in a library of assets that maybe answer frequently answered questions. Using video versus more live meetings and more long text emails really does optimize the engagement with your customer stakeholders by giving them answers or information that they're looking for in a really easy to consume, trackable format. They don't want to be on live calls or read long text-based emails either. So it's been really beneficial for us and for a lot of our peers in the industry. For us as pre-sales professionals, obviously, time is such a valuable asset. So by incorporating on-demand video, we can get rid of repeated tasks, deflect some of those with video content, and we can really enable our colleagues, in our case, our account executives, to support their customer stakeholders with product level content without needing our direct support. So it's been really effective for us. And as I mentioned, it's a big thing that we do at Vidyard. So lots to dig into around this topic.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ellen. And we've had a lot of conversations in preparation for this event, and you just kind of covered this, but I am curious on why you see more teams moving to asynchronous videos from your perspective.
Yeah, I think a lot of us, we've used this term at Vidyard, but I know there's other tech that do it, but we talk about being zoomed out a lot, especially in the last 18 months. So we're looking for ways to get off more meetings, and video is just such an effective form of communication. People are used to it in their personal lives. It's a great way to really connect with information, complex concepts. It's easy to communicate that versus video. You can watch it on your own time. You don't have to deal with scheduling issues going back and forth. And as I mentioned, complex concepts, which we're often covering in pre-sales, you don't necessarily want to read long form content, long text form content to get the answers. So finding ways to incorporate video is beneficial for us, but it's also really beneficial for our audiences and how they like to consume information these days.
Yeah, that's a really good point, on how they're consuming. And Megan, I want to go to you, right? You work at Lenovo, known for hardware or intelligent device, right? And so as you're starting to see this hybrid workplace come into play, why are videos, crucial in connecting with potential customers from your perspective?
So from my perspective, in this hybrid world, videos are so important because you're able to kind of, connect with that customer, build your brand through that and be able to, engage with them. And then also kind of just going off of what Ellen was saying with having asynchronous videos versus live is that you are able to track who is actually going to view your videos. And also in this day and age of Netflix and people watching YouTube, we're used to asynchronous videos. And you're able to personalize that and build that library, which I know we'll get into in a little bit as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think the one thing that comes to mind here for me is as we're kind of entering back into a place where we are meeting customers, sometimes we're not meeting customers. And so actually getting stakeholders involved and getting face-to-face is harder than ever, really. And so
And this is just another way to create engagement. And as the environment changes, we have to get more creative. And that is exactly where video comes into play.
Great point, Megan. Appreciate that. And so, Joel, before we move into our next topic, I want to know from your perspective. You're in the field. So, what stage in the sales cycle are you seeing videos most useful right now?
So, I mean, I think we see it kind of across all the stages of sales. Obviously, whether it's even less stuff that we're going to do, but that our AE peers are doing when it's reaching out to brand new opportunities. And getting them to be able to, get really a personal connection going on, which is just going to help us later in the cycle. But then through the whole thing, right, just being able to, as Ellen was saying, like really cut down on the number of meetings. It really slows stuff down. Like it's a lot better than having to travel, but we're now used to, not traveling. And so, it's kind of like when we went to tap on our debit card, like now it seems like it takes so long to go back to sticking the card in. It's like even Zoom now doesn't seem as fast as we want it to be. So it lets us do things where, someone asks for something, we can send them an answer immediately. And so that really applies, across the board. Also works really well, even at late stage, when someone's decided what they want to do, but we're having to communicate with the rest of the team that we've never communicated with, not relying on, is our champion going to communicate to legal what we do? The number of calls that I've been on where legal comes on and they have no idea what product we sell in any way, shape, or form. And being able to communicate with them, very quickly before that conversation, if we even do have a conversation, to say, hey, here's what we're doing, level setting that stage, being able to even get the feedback that they actually read it, because of course you can't get that necessarily with email. It helps speed up that whole process and also make it so light touch when you start to reuse the same content. And frankly, cheat because they don't even know you're reusing it, right? It seems personal to them, but it's the same piece you sent 10 other people as well.
Yeah.
And James, I'll add to that too. We'll often look at our sales process, sales cycle, and look at where the velocity isn't necessarily where we want it to be. And we'll look at what tasks we're repeating most often. And that's where we'll add a video. So for us, it's all the way through the sales cycle, as Joel mentioned, from prospecting for a deal to when pre-sales gets involved to when we're handing off to maybe customer success. But how we approached it was looking at where could we eliminate things that are slowing us down and maybe not getting the customer where they want, what they need. And we looked at ways to incorporate video.
Yeah, I love those perspectives, and thank you both for adding in, because I'm excited that we're going to dig into some of these details. I already see a number of questions coming through. So again, continue to use the Q&A for questions. Use the chat if you have an opinion or something you want to share. We're going to run a poll. We're going to run a poll before we get started. So I've just launched a poll and would like to know who is using a library of asynchronous videos in their process today. No wrong or right answers here, but let's see where the audience is at. And I'm not going to lie, I'm pretty surprised by these. We started about 78% not using video or only sharing live, but we're about 50% now. So what these numbers are, we have about 70% of people who've responded. We're looking at about 50% people are no or sharing live videos, or mostly general. 15% is using personalized. So we'll leave this poll up for just a moment, and then we'll get into it. So what we're going to do today, right? I said that we're going to be having conversations and making this engaging. That's what we like to do here at the Pre-Sales Collective, is make this an engaging format. So we have a couple different video types that we are going to discuss. We'll do some questions around each of them. So continue to add your Q&A, and then we'll move through and then audience Q&A at the end. And so our first one is the product level demo video, which I think most of us are so aware of. So Megan, why don't you talk to us about the product level demo video?
So once again, going back to the fact that we haven't been able to be in person with customers in the last 18 months, here at Lenovo, over the last 18 months, we've released a lot of new products. And so we have to think of creative ways to showcase these new products to our customers. And I will be transparent with you guys. When I first started doing product demos 18 months ago, I did struggle a little bit because it's hard to show things like, for example, like the weight of a laptop on a product demo. So I had to think of creative ways to like, well, one time I did use a scale to show how light this device was, but also thinking of ways to have, really good camera quality so that they're able to see, for example, the ports on this device. And then also, like, for example, we released this X1 titanium product, and I'm able to show through my product demo how thin this actually is. But we're having to get more creative and trying to figure out ways to really show what these products are all about to our customers. And like it says on the slide here, we want to keep it simple. And then also, as you guys are probably fully aware, there's supply issues in every different industry right now. And so at Lenovo, because we do have those issues, it's sometimes an easier way to connect with the customer and show them exactly what type of product that we have to offer.
One, I'm so happy that you just pulled out hardware right now on this webinar. Like when we were discussing who should be on this panel, getting a mix of hardware and software together to talk about video, in my opinion, is super powerful, because a lot of the things that many software professionals think about may or may not apply to hardware. And a lot of things that happen in hardware, like you just said, actually showing the device and the weight and getting a scale, that's creativity. That really is. But like you said, there's supply issues and there's a lot of things that you're encountering. So I'm curious, like, how much of your library is personalized and how much is general for you and your team? Megan.
So right now it's more so general, because what we do is we produce these product demos and we give them to our sales team so they're able to go and utilize them and send them to their customers. Another thing I did start doing last year around the summertime, when, say, we have this X1 Fold product come out, I was posting videos on my LinkedIn. So my LinkedIn followers would know about, oh, hey, Lenovo has this new product. And so that was more of a general type of video. But obviously, if there is a certain customer that we're trying to talk to, we will make it a personalized product demo for them.
Yeah. No, I really like that. And I'm glad that I'm seeing a lot of comments right now about the hardware approach to videos in this day and age. But Joel, I want to ask you a very specific question. Ellen, you and Ellen in the beginning were kind of talking about velocity and such. And so as, working for a video company, I want to understand, like, what is the secret sauce? Like, when and how do you decide when you should be creating a video or not?
So, I mean, I think for us, it's a bit of a cheat, and I'm creating a video by default, right? Because it's what we do. It's how we dog food it. But I do think, like, it's been very helpful for me in kind of forcing myself to dog food it, to start to think through, doing that by default, because it does work so well. It's quicker than writing it out, right? Like if I have to sit down and type out what I would communicate in a 1-minute video, like that's going to take me a very long time to do. I'm also going to be a lot more forgiving to myself on video. If I mess up a little bit, it's not like the email where I'm going to sit there and make it perfect every single time. And so what I've really started to do is just create video around everything and then see what sticks. It works really well for some things. It's not going to work well for other particular kinds of things you're going to do, and you're really not going to know until you do it. But how I've approached it is really trying to keep the personalization as light as possible so that I can go back and really easily build out that library. And then as I see an asset that I'm using more and more and more that I literally whipped up in 2 minutes, I'm going to then be able to say and go back, and say, okay, this is something I should spend more time on. I should make a fully flushed out video that I've really thought through, that I've really spent time on, but not doing that necessarily up front so that I can see what sticks, right? I'm not going to know, is this going to hit home the way I think it's going to until I've tried it, until I can see the stats on, if people are watching it, all that kind of stuff. So I think it's really just like trying it everywhere and doing it in a way, people don't expect us to be on stages with 10 cameras, right? People, and honestly, people like it. People like I love watching someone in their house go through something, right? Like we all know that we've watched that guy in his like basement on YouTube, like do an unboxing, and it's like, sorry to our marketing friends, but it's better than the $40,000 marketing video. Because like to Megan's point, right? When Megan was talking about doing the hardware thing, I know when I was an IT manager, I used to like pull these boxes apart, right? I wanted to know, is there a cable in the box? Like, is there this? Is there this? I want to know that stuff at the nitty gritty detail. And I want it to be like super authentic. So I think like that's the role we have, right? We're trusted advisors. We can be really authentic. We can be really real and just, have that come through and not worry so much that, I mean, obviously we want good lighting, we want these things, but it's more important to get the content out there and see what happens than to spend, a month making a single video and then it may not go anywhere. You really don't know until you try.
Yeah.
And I want to add to that too, because one thing we've learned at Lenovo with videos over the last 18 months, once again, is that you don't need to pay like $40,000 to have an actual like video team, camera team come in. We're able to do it with having a nice ring light, a great camera, a great background. And that comes, like Joel was saying, more authentic. So just wanted to add to that.
I think that's a great point. I'm seeing a lot of comments right now about, not over engineering or, making it more personalized, because I think, Joel, one of the things that you said that really resonate with me is the idea of innovation and experimentation in pre-sales, right? And being able to say, we can all say, like, we've had the example of like marketing's like, oh, this video is coming out, and then it doesn't hit the mark. And so the SE team has to go in and kind of bridge that gap for what sales needs. So I like that you talked about, and I think this, as we talked about the product level demo videos, I think what we're all used to, and, there's so many different examples of this, but I'm excited to get into this next topic because I think it's super interesting and something that many of us have been yet to discover is the how-to or technical deep dive video. So Megan, let's talk about this.
So for us, what we've been doing when we get into like a little bit more of a detailed concept or solution at Lenovo is what I will do is I will kind of moderate the video and take them through exactly what the deep dive is, but I will also have a subject matter expert who has that technical background and really can add to my video and explain the full topic. And what we've learned as well is that having two people in a video versus one really creates that engagement, and you're able to kind of form that chemistry and bounce ideas off of each other and, work together to really create that engaging video for customers.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad you brought that up, right? Because I also know your pre-sales leader, and Stephen Miller's been on our podcast for the Edutainer. And that is an amazing podcast episode. If you haven't heard it, Stephen's approach to pre-sales and making an impact is educating and entertaining at the same time. And so, I'm curious, like on that, what was the kind of rationale when it came to like technical deep dive for you to bring, you and Stephen into that conversation? Because I think when people think about technical deep dives, they don't necessarily think like two people on one video discussing a particular subject.
So we did that because once again, it's better to reach the audience or to reach customers by having the two of us. And especially if it's like, say, for example, Stephen and I doing a video together, we have a great time. People call it the Megan and Stephen show whenever we do like a video together. So that's kind of why we do that. And then also another thing that I've been doing is, James, you work with my director, who's part of the pre-sales collective, and she has a bunch of sales engineers that work under her. And so bringing in those sales engineers that I have good chemistry with can really create that great video that more people will actually tune into versus, getting distracted while watching a video
I think
on a deep dive.
Yeah, it's a very creative approach to technical conversations. And I actually see a lot of people asking, like, who owns the actual production? Like, what is the level of production of videos?
It's us.
I love it. Right. And I think to Joel's last point, right, about the individual in his basement who might be recording a video, sometimes that allows us to make more of an impact, right? It's a little bit more trusting when it's a little bit less formal and less professional in that setting. And so, Ellen, I'm curious, as a leader, right, you're managing resources at all times at Vidyard, right? I know that that's something that is on top of your mind. And so, what's the process internally to get support for a live resources versus a video? Like, how do you tell an AE or a CSM, a person, like someone who's like, hey, you can't have a pre-sales person, you actually have to use video in this situation?
Yeah, I think naturally people are accepting video more and more as a form of communication. So they recognize that it will allow them to move their deal faster potentially without having to deal with schedules, as I mentioned before, and use good on-demand content. We were talking about in the chat, I see who owns it, right? So for us, product marketing will only be a very quick, it's a short video to introduce a feature or an integration that we're working with. The solutions consultants own these micro demos that go into more value in terms of the problem that we solve. And then we have our technical support team often do long form content in terms of how you actually set something up. So they realize what resources are available to them. They realize there's a breadth of different types of resources that are available to them. And they understand the value of using those over, scheduling and things like that, that they're naturally bought in when they realize like what is available to them in terms of the library. So building out things that get feedback from those counterparts to say, what would you like to see? What are some of those pain points in the sales cycle? And then create content that supports that. And it's like, what's in it for them in terms of the way you frame it and the types of content that you produce. We get buy-in that way.
Well, Ellen, you bring up a really good point, because I'm seeing some people ask, like, and Ryan asked this question and used the word fight. Like, how do you fight sales perception to use a video that maybe it's not worth their time? Like you just mentioned that there's a lot in there for them, but obviously that doesn't happen overnight. So like, let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So like, we will still join live calls. We always look at what is the complexity of the deal. And sometimes we look at the size of the deal. And if the A makes a good point around like, we should be jumping in for a live resource, we'll certainly support that. But often they'll recognize sort of what the best use of their own time is, similar to what the best use of the solutions consultant time is. So we tend to have guidelines. With Vidyard, you can create videos. It's available for free. So we'll either have a library of assets that we've pre-recorded and making those available, or if we can't get on a live call because of scheduling, we'll create a custom video. And usually that appeases the account executive because it's specifically for that deal. It talks about the complexity of that deal and it solves the problem for that specific person. And it's a really strong resource that they can use outside of using a live one. So we have this library of assets, but we're always flexible with it depending on different factors that are involved in the request that's coming through for us.
Yeah, really appreciate that perspective. And I just want to thank everyone. There's so much engagement happening in the chat. And sometimes people just message the host and the panelists, not everyone, and the Q&A. It's fantastic. So I want to ask you a follow-up question, Joel. Pulkit asked a question about what happens when a customer reaches fatigue when it comes to just sending videos in a process? Like, have you had that happen before?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a tool in the tool belt, right? Like, we are definitely never suggesting to anyone we're talking to that you stop sending emails, that you stop doing live meetings. It's let's use this where it's effective. And you definitely don't want to overuse any of those things, right? So there's times where you're just chatting back and forth. I mean, I'm not going to make a 10-second video to just say, thanks, I got your email and it looks good. Like, that doesn't make sense. And also, like, you do need those Zoom calls, right? There's no way around the fact that you need to have the meetings, you need to have the interaction, you need to get the information out of them. But there are these times, and you're gonna learn where they are. And it's also really going to depend on the deal. Like, just because we have a video, to Ellen's point, for a specific thing, doesn't mean that we're going to use it as a crutch every single time. We're going to look at it and we're going to say, does this make sense to use in this situation? Or should we get on a call because we know that this person is more easily confused because of these things that have happened in the past. And so we want to make sure that they really understand, versus this person's moving really quick and we want to be able to share this with them, or there's a team that we need to share it with, and there's no way we're going to get them on a call. Let's use video in this case. So it's not overusing it. It's using it where it makes sense.
That's great perspective. And I think that's a good transition into this next component, which I know that when I was introduced to this topic, this resonated really well with me. And even something you had said earlier, Joel, I saw a couple comments in the chat. So why don't you talk to us about the cross-functional video?
Yeah, so this is very much the idea of bringing in, those other assets on your team, maybe outside of the sales team, to really help drive home a certain point, to really help ease the transition into something else. So, if we're doing, a lot of times we'll have someone asking about what does implementation look like, and again, to that trusted, us being that trusted advisor, we can only push that so far, right? We're not on the implementation team. We're going to be kind of speaking secondhand about some of those things. So what we found really powerful is being able to, and again, we don't want to use too much of those individuals' time, right? our head of implementation, we don't want to bring them on every single call, but there's a lot of value that they can provide. And so what we can do through the use of video is have them create, again, either more generic or more custom for the deals where that makes sense. An individual video for this particular use case. A short video that they can send over that says, hey, here's who we are. You're going to get to know us. Here's how the process looks. Just really build that trust level up. And it just makes it, again, something where you can bring those assets to bear then a lot more often, but in a way that's not slowing down the process. So we're not having to book 3 weeks out in order to be able to assure that person can make a meeting for really only 5 minutes that they're going to talk, but that it's valuable to have their input into the process to drive the outcomes that we want to have.
Yeah. The point that resonates the most with me is that professional services conversation. I mean, especially if you're at a startup or scale up, I felt like as an SC, like at my 2 companies ago, half my job or 30% of my job was professional services conversations because we couldn't actually scale that team. And so that resonates with me. But I'm going to ask you a little bit of a curveball question, Joel. Have you ever utilized any of your customers in those, cross-functional videos? Like maybe not just your professional services head, but maybe an actual customer talking about some of their implementation or something along those lines to build that trust that you were mentioning?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can use it very well, not in the standard use of a customer story, right? But in a much more specific. Customer stories tend to be, a pretty broad, talking about the whole thing, but almost, around solving particular pain points, right? Talking about, we had this problem, here's exactly what we did. Again, that brings huge credibility to you when it's a customer saying that. And it's also very simple for them to make, right? Again, Megan's point, we're not asking them to sit down and spend the entire day recording a video. We might hop on a call with them to be able to coach them. We may just ask them to just make it on the fly, send it over to us. And it's something we can use, and we don't have to go back to them again and again and keep asking them to join calls or anything. We've got it once, we can use it where it makes sense.
Yeah, and that's actually a great perspective. And Ellen, I want to kind of double down on that. Like as a leader of the team and scaling yourself, obviously always hard to do, especially in a early stage company. How do you utilize cross-functional videos to provide value, as a leader of the pre-sales organization?
Internally, you mean within?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we do that quite a lot. So we try to have the least amount of meetings as possible. So we leverage video. You can secure the Vidyard video. So we do that if there's anything that we're talking through that we're not ready to share out with the organization yet. And it's the next best thing to being there in person, right? So you can hear their tone, you can see their body language, so you can see how passionate they are about that internal topic and how they want buy-in from this other thing internally. So we do screen shares if there's things that we want to cover, obviously, so we can show them and avoid a 30-minute meeting, have a 5-minute video. So we do that quite a lot. And that's what a lot of customers of ours will do too. It's like, how do you minimize that time that you're spending in calls and things like that?
Yeah. And, I think that probably resonates with a lot of people right now, because I think we're all Zoom fatigue, meeting fatigue. What turned into, I have to travel, a couple of days a month has turned into 0, which has meant everyone puts more meetings on your calendar. And so how do you get away from some of those meetings to get that space? There's a lot of really good questions. And so I do want to move to our last section before we go to audience Q&A, because I'd like to do a lot of audience Q&A because it is coming in. But I want to talk about the solution recap video. This, again, something that resonated with me, and I'll highlight that here momentarily. But Joel, let's talk about what this actually is.
Yeah, so the idea here is around, we've done that discovery, we've done the demo, we've moved into the late stages. Maybe we have won the deal already, maybe we're about to win it, and really just providing that single source of truth of a recap of, here's everything we've learned, here's somewhat of a demo or something like that, very tailored to your situation, that everybody can use to get other people on board. To get themselves excited again. We've even used, those kinds of videos to pass over to, the launch and implementation team to give to the customers to get, buy-in from the actual users of the product. So here's what's coming, a little bit of a teaser. They can share it at their sales kickoff and say, hey, this tool is coming, this thing is coming. and really just be able to have that very single, that very single source of truth that everyone's on the same page. So the CEO, someone says to them, we're buying this thing. Okay, here's the video. The CEO watches it 5 minutes and it says, okay, we know that you said the right things. We know that they said that they can do it. Here's how they're going to do it. I'm going to sign off on it, right? Rather than relying on, is the champion communicating? Do we have to hop on this call and that call and this? And then we hop on the call and then the CEO is busy, he doesn't show up, all these kinds of things. It's just very powerful for that kind of thing to get everyone on the same page, wrap it all up in a nice tight bow and be able to have everyone be on the same page.
Oh, that's good. Joel, so would you say this CEO type use case is what has worked the most for you and for Vidyard and your sales cycles?
I mean, I think those really, it could be any stakeholders, right? Normally what we're seeing, of course, as everyone's seeing, large buying teams, but it's so hard for these teams to be communicating with outside teams, with them not being in the office. They're not having these random conversations. I think it's really communicating with anyone, but obviously the higher we're going to go in the organization, the harder it's going to be to get time with that person. Yeah. So if we can send them over a 3-minute video that they're going to be able to watch at 10 o'clock at night when they're sitting in their chair, and then they're like, boom, done, sign off, good to go. Like, definitely there is, I think, more power in those, because getting to those individuals directly is so much more challenging.
No, it's a very good point, right? I mean, when you said the example of the CEO not showing up to a meeting, I'm sure, if you even want to raise your hand on the Zoom, how many times have you had so much preparation for a meeting, it's scheduled weeks out, and all of a sudden the main individual, the CEO, CMO, CRO, whoever it is, doesn't show up. I already see a couple hands. Like, how often does that happen? Right. And then it puts you back and really pushes things down the process. Ellen, one of the things, it is painful, Steph, you're absolutely right. I'm thinking about the experience like 2 years ago, and I'm like, oh, it still hurts, But Ellen, I'm curious your thoughts on this, because when I saw this slide and we talked about it, I saw this users and admin component. And I thought back to my startup experience, where a lot of times, at a company called Showpad, we sold to sales enablement or to marketing. But it was an end product for salespeople. And so we had to get the buy-in from the salespeople to say, hey, this is going to make your job easier. But the marketing team had administrate it. And we never really sent a lot of videos in this component. And I feel like this would have maybe made our lives a little bit easier. So I'm just curious if you have a perspective here, especially when it comes to users and admins.
Oh, definitely. To Joel's point, this video for us takes a whole bunch of different forms. It's always custom, personalized for that use case. But for Vidyard, we will have our admins, which are usually sales leaders, sales enablement, sales operations. But for any SaaS product, we're really focused on adoption and engagement with the users themselves, right? So we use videos like this to get them excited. Sometimes you asked about customers getting involved in sending videos. Sometimes we'll use customer examples in this too. So it's really about getting them bought in early so they know what to expect when this tool comes to them, and we can sort of influence that launch process with the users. Instead of only relying on the stakeholders that we've been involved in, we can really get them excited with this type of content. So that's been a pretty helpful piece for us, whether it's from the pre-sales team on our end or it's from our launch team. We do these types of videos to get them bought in early.
Yeah, no, I like that you said that, right? Because I think there's so many times we talk about customer lifecycle a lot with Pre-Sales Collective, and there's this like, you ask the same questions, the BDR asks, and then the AE asks, and the SE asks, and the post-sale team asks too. And so, if you can kind of have a little bit of cohesion with these videos, it obviously can make people a little bit more aware of what happens. And Megan, I want to put you on the spot here before we move to audience Q&A. Do you have any perspective in terms of how the solution recap video, works with hardware, or, expand on some of the things that we've talked about?
So I could see, because we don't currently do any, from my knowledge, solution recap videos, but I could see within the sales cycle and with our sales representatives at Lenovo, they could easily use this after a meeting to kind of summarize everything that was discussed and really go through that whole solution. And also, once again, making it personalized. I think that personalization piece is key when talking to customers. And one other thing I did think about as we were going through the webinar is also there has been this huge push within sales to do social selling. So that is just another way, by having videos that you're sending to your customers, you can really focus on social selling and also building your brand, which just goes back to LinkedIn and utilizing that and having all your connections to your videos and whatnot. So just one other thought I had.
It's a great point, Megan. And just to be super transparent, when we were figuring out, who should all be on this webinar, I noticed, Megan, you and Steven and your team were all over LinkedIn utilizing video. And so that was a really good point. I want to move to audience Q&A for about 5 to 10 minutes, because we've got a lot of really great questions. Again, try to use your questions in the Q&A. If what we don't get through, I am going to put them in the Pre-Sales Collective Slack, which I'll talk about after, and we'll have some discussion there. But Megan, I'm going to ask you first. We've talked a lot. I've seen some questions around equipment and making sure that your setup is top notch. What's your recommendation?
A really good external camera. That is key. So we do sell at Lenovo our Think Smart Cam, which is part of our Smart Office products, which we've been kind of really pushing lately just because of the environment we're in. Also, even things like a Logitech camera, but just having that really nice camera, and you really don't need fancy equipment. Like, I have my camera, I have a ring light, I have a lamp in front of me. I did spend quite a bit of time on my background because I took this role as the pandemic hit. I didn't know I was going to be in this virtual world forever. And so my dad, he's a very handy person, and he built these shelves behind me. So I kind of have my mini showcase, and that did not cost much. So just doing things like that to kind of just curate your background and have the best lighting so that you have that great video to send out to your customers.
Yeah, it's a great point. And your background looks amazing. And actually, all three of you, your backgrounds look great. I'm using a virtual background because my background's not very good. And so great point on the camera. I actually invested in a Logitech Brio. It was about $200 US. And it has been a wonderful camera for me. So appreciate that. We've seen a lot of questions. And Joel, I'm going to ask you this one. Seeing probably half a dozen questions on video length. Talk to me about what is an appropriate video length. I know that's a very loaded question.
It's a very loaded question. And I'm going to start with a horrible answer, and then I'll give a better answer. So I'm going to start with, it depends, right? I've talked to customers who say it depends on the country. So I actually talked to a customer who told us that what they found was that in Germany, their customers liked longer, deeper dive videos. And in the rest of Europe, they actually preferred shorter videos. So I know that totally goes along with the stereotype that like Germans are into engineering and want to know all the nitty gritty details. But for them, that's what turned out happening. But I think generally, like, you do want to keep it short, right? It's like anything else. The people are busy. You want to make sure you get the good information across. A good way to do that, I think, is to do, perhaps even have multiple pieces of content available to someone. So do that overview video that's a minute, 2 minutes long, where you cover what you want to make sure that they get. And then, so lots of tools have this. We have the ability to do playlists. So you can do that overview video. And then after that, you could also have an additional longer piece of content that really goes into the detail. If someone wants to do that, it's available to them, but you've made sure that they've got the content. What you don't want to have happen is what you don't want to have happen on demos where, they need to cut off early. You went on for 10 minutes. The juiciest bit was in the last 30 seconds and they stopped. They spent 6 minutes, but they didn't get to the juicy bit. So you really want to think through, how can I do this in the most succinct way? But then give someone the opportunity to still branch out and get more detail if that's what they want.
I like that a lot. And it actually resonates with the Pre-Sales Collective blog article by Stephanie Day that she just wrote, right? And a lot that has gone fairly viral. So if you haven't checked it out, check out Pre-Sales Collective blog. But one of the things that she puts on there is that kind of like reporting at the end, right? People tend to, when they do process oriented videos, tend to keep the best for last. But in reality, if you have a long video and nobody gets to it, how are you supposed to approach that situation? So Ellen, I want to follow up with a question that I've seen floating around a little bit. You talked a lot about utilizing data for when, how, where you use videos. I'm also interested, it's a high level question of like, maybe walk us through a little bit about where you're utilizing data when it comes to video internally, but I'm also interested externally when it comes to how well those videos are resonating, like as Joel mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do a few different things. We track the types of requests that are coming to us, like one-off requests that are coming from AEs. And if we're seeing trends, we'll make a video. So that might be an internal video to enable the account executives on the complexities of that solution, or we'll make a new micro demo that's available to them to qualify their prospects before they ask us for a live demo. So we can see that from the requests that are coming in. But then of course we use Vidyard to understand how impactful our videos are. So to Joel's point, if we're finding that we're losing people in their attention span, we have a 4-minute micro demo on a specific integration that the A's are using, but everybody drops off at the 50% mark. We should probably redo that video and move that part earlier in the really interesting part earlier in the video. So we have that ability using our technology to say this is working there, this isn't. And then as I mentioned earlier, we use our CRM system to understand where the opportunities aren't moving as fast as they could be, where a pre-sales resource is being leveraged. And then we look at, okay, is there an opportunity to get an AE more video assets to qualify a deal? If somebody actually watched that video, maybe then we'll schedule a live call. We'll pre-qualify that person and their intent ahead of doing a live call. So we look for those types of opportunities, either for requests coming to us, our CRM, and then the Vidyard data.
It's a great perspective, and goes back to really utilizing your own product. And Joel called it dog food, but I will tell you, a marketing person once told me it's not dog food, it's drinking your own champagne. Like that's marketing spin for you. So I typically call that drinking your own champagne. So we've got some questions around actual how much time this takes. And so Megan, I'm curious, like how much time in maybe a given week are you spending creating videos?
It depends. When I first started off creating like demo videos, I definitely took a lot longer because I was just trying to get like what I was saying right. Because definitely for these product videos, demo videos that I do try to keep them 3 minutes max, just because, that's people's attention span and whatnot. But yeah, typically like an hour or so, depending upon, if I can't seem to get my words right that day. But not much time at all. And I don't use anything fancy. I just record on Zoom or Teams with the MP4. And that's pretty much how I do it because I have that nice camera. It does come out pretty well.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty much how much time, like a couple hours maybe, just to get it done.
I like that. Joel, I'm gonna ask you the same question. Obviously being Vidyard, because you do video, I'm curious if that is very similar, because Megan makes a great point, right? There's a lot of people who are like, oh, I don't want to do video, or it takes so much work, but you just talk about it's repetition and practice, and you've kind of got it down. And so it's not as much of a barrier to entry. So Joel, I'm curious your perspective on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely is a practice thing. And it's definitely the kind of video you're doing. So you're going to have those kinds of videos. When we make the micro demo videos, we're still doing some of those that have the music, that have the slides, that have the transitions, right? Obviously, those are taking us more time. But at the same time, it's not overthinking it too much, right? There's still a lot of power in sitting down and just doing it. And you might mess up 2 times, but it's still less time than sitting there and writing out a whole script, trying to memorize the whole script and do it. And when you do that, it tends to come across as scripted too, right? So there is always that credibility thing there, right? It's, if I was on a call, I'm not reading on a script. I'm going to say what I'm going to say. If I mess up hugely, I'll redo it. But for the most part, it's get it out there, and it definitely gets easier every time you do it. I would say leave your video off. Nothing worse than looking at yourself while you're trying to record the video, because it's absolutely the worst. So don't do that. But go through it, and if you need to restart. But I wouldn't overthink any of it too much. And it can get down to, a lot of these, I probably will send off 5 or 6 a day, and they're taking 2 minutes longer than the actual length of time I'm recording the video each. So it's not much. It's less than it would have taken me to type it out.
Yeah, I like that. And there's actually a couple of questions about scripting in there, so you just answered those right there. So Ellen, I'm curious though, as a leader, are you seeing your team in fewer meetings because you're using video, or are you seeing your team take on more opportunities because they're able to scale themselves a little bit better because they're not always on live calls?
Yeah, the latter. So at Vidyard, we have transactional sales cycles and we have more complex strategic sales cycles. So we're really looking at ways to support the transactional deals at scale so that we can be involved in more of the strategic deals. So we've always done video, so it's hard to say if it's better or worse, but that's sort of the way we look at it. If we're seeing repeated tasks, we look for video. And to Joel's point and the question around scripting, we do still do scripting for our micro demos. We'll do a script of what we walk through, like a show and a tell script basically for the two. But to Joel's point, the more we do it, the faster we get. And then the one-off videos for a specific opportunity are super, super quick. But we look for, if we're doing a ton of those one-offs, should we do a scripted repeated one that we can leverage across the team? So
that's great. That's great insight for sure. And so I'm going to start wrapping up. So I want to know how we did today. How did we do today? For the people that are on, let us know how we did today. I'm curious if we'll see you at our workshop next week. So Joel and Ankur are going to be joining us again to go a little bit further in depth on this. And then we'll also be going to Slack. So if you're not in our Pre-Sales Collective Slack, presalescollective.com/Slack to get engaged. There's over 6,000 people discussing and conversing all the time. Super interactive. But before I get into my announcements, I really just want to thank you, Ellen, Megan, and Joel. Fantastic webinar today. Super engaging all the way across. And that's, my favorite way that we like to do these. You've provided a ton of actionable insights and just want to say thanks.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Of course.
Yeah.
So for our last couple announcements, I'll send this in the follow-up email after this event, but our workshop is next week. So there is a message in your chat. If you want to check out the URL to join the workshop, that would be fantastic. I'm also going to go ahead and send the Slack link over there as well. But a couple of things, right? We got a Pre-Sales Collective podcast. I mentioned Stephen Miller has been on the podcast. We release these every Monday at 5 a.m. Eastern time. We've had some really great guests, really entertaining guests. And so definitely want to encourage you to check it out. And if there's any topics that have really resonated with you, please let me know. And this meeting today will be recorded and posted on YouTube, and the workshop will be posted on YouTube as well for those that are asking in the chat. Again, would love to see you in our Slack environment. I mean, for us at Pre-Sales Collective, we truly believe that community is built on two-way communication, right? We can put out our blogs and our webinars and everything that's one way, but we want two-way. And that's really where this community has come together, is in the Slack environment. So I'd encourage you to join and continue conversations in there. And otherwise, one of our favorite things is like to give you some time back, right? We like to be the webinar that gives you a little bit of time back in your day, prep for your next meeting. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you again to the panel, and we'll see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.